When people imagine Alaska, they think of stunning glaciers, endless pine forests, and skies so vast they seem to swallow you whole. I thought the same before I went there. What I didn't expect was to return with scars, both on my body and on my mind, that would never fully heal. It all began in early 2012. I was 24 at the time, a young biologist fascinated by wilderness survival and untouched ecosystems. I had been accepted into a small research expedition led by Dr. Michael Harrington, a seasoned scientist with years of experience in extreme conditions. Our mission: to document wildlife patterns in the Brooks Range, one of the most remote and least explored regions of northern Alaska. The team consisted of 6 people: Dr. Harrington, myself, 2 graduate students named Erica and Luis, a survival expert named Tom, and our guide, a native Alaskan named Jonah. Jonah had grown up in a nearby village and claimed to know the land better than anyone else. He warned us repeatedly, "The Brooks is alive. The land listens, the forest remembers. Don't think you're in charge just because you have maps." At first, we dismissed his words as folklore, superstition. But Jonah's eyes were always watchful, as though he expected the forest to reveal something dreadful at any moment. We set up camp near a frozen river. The first few days were exhilarating, tracking caribou herds, photographing eagles, even spotting the distant movement of a grizzly bear. Nights were freezing but beautiful, with northern lights painting the sky in ghostly green ribbons. Then, strange things began happening. On the 4th night, Erica swore she heard voices outside her tent, soft whispers in a language she didn't recognize. Luis thought it was just the wind carrying echoes through the valley, but I noticed Jonah's face when she mentioned it. He grew pale and muttered something under his breath in his native tongue. The next morning, our food supplies seemed disturbed. A sealed container of dried meat had been ripped open, not clawed, not chewed, but torn with unnatural precision, as though cut by invisible hands. Tom insisted it was a wolverine or wolf, but the tracks around the camp didn't match any animal. In fact, there were no tracks at all. That was when Jonah told us the legend. He spoke of the kalupalik, a creature whispered about in Inuit stories. According to him, it was a being that lived near icy waters, luring wanderers with soft voices, dragging them into the wilderness where they vanished forever. "They like to whisper," Jonah said grimly. "If you answer them, they take you." We laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. But that night, as I lay in my tent, I heard it too. A whisper, so faint I thought it was my imagination. It said my name, and that was only the beginning of the nightmare. The following day, the atmosphere in camp was tense. No one admitted it openly, but we were all shaken. Even Tom, who had laughed the loudest at Jonah's warning, kept glancing at the tree line while sharpening his hunting knife. The whispers didn't stop. Erica was the most affected. She claimed to hear them constantly, as though they were circling her. Luis tried to reassure her, saying stress and exhaustion were playing tricks on her mind. But that explanation didn't hold up when I heard them myself again. That night, I couldn't sleep. My tent rustled with the faintest brush of wind, and then, clear as day, a voice, a whisper, curling through the darkness. It spoke my name again. I froze, my heart pounding. "Come closer!" I sat upright, clutching my flashlight, every muscle in my body screaming not to move. The sound wasn't outside my tent anymore, it was inside. I forced myself to switch on the flashlight, casting the beam across the fabric walls. Nothing, just the glow of condensation and my own ragged breath. But the air inside the tent had grown cold, unnaturally cold, colder than the sub-zero night outside. At dawn, I stumbled out of my tent, pale and trembling. Jonah was waiting by the fire. He looked at me as though he already knew. "Did you answer them?" he asked. "No," I whispered. "Good," he said, nodding. "That is how they take you." That day, we found something that made all of us question whether we should continue at all. We were following wolf tracks when Erica screamed. She had spotted something buried halfway in the snow. It was a boot. Not just any boot. It was a heavy-duty expedition boot, half frozen into the ice. When Tom pulled it free, we saw the bones still inside. Panic rippled through the group. Jonah knelt by the boot and closed his eyes. "Another one," he muttered. He told us stories of expeditions before ours, small teams that had gone missing in the Brooks Range, never to be seen again. The government reports called them accidents, avalanches, hypothermia, bear attacks. But the villagers knew better. "The land keeps what it wants," Jonah said. That night, no one slept. The whispers grew louder, bolder. Sometimes they sounded far away, sometimes so close they made the fabric of the tents shiver. Erica began crying uncontrollably. Luis snapped at her, shouting that she was losing her mind. But then he stopped mid-sentence, his face drained of color. "Did you hear that?" he asked. A whisper had called his name. By the 6th day, morale had collapsed. Dr. Harrington wanted to press on, insisting we had come too far to turn back. "We're scientists, not children spooked by fairy tales," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. That evening, while we gathered wood for the fire, Erica wandered off. We thought she was behind us, until Jonah suddenly stopped and cursed under his breath. Her footprints trailed away from the group, heading deeper into the trees. We called her name. No answer. We followed the trail, our flashlights bouncing against the snow. After half a mile, the prints stopped abruptly, as though she had vanished mid-step. No drag marks, no signs of struggle. Just nothing. A low whisper drifted through the trees, curling like smoke. This time, we all heard it. A woman's voice, soft and almost tender. "Stay with me." Jonah dropped the firewood and grabbed my arm. His eyes were wild. "We need to leave. Now." But leaving was easier said than done, because something was following us. We tried to retrace our steps back to camp, but the fog had grown so thick we could barely see 10 feet ahead. The air smelled strange, wet, metallic, like rust and blood. The snow beneath our boots crunched louder than usual, each sound echoing through the valley as though we weren't alone. When we finally stumbled back into camp, Erica's tent was shredded. Not torn by claws or knives, but slashed in long, deliberate cuts. Her belongings were gone. Sleeping bag, clothes, journal, all missing. Luis broke down. He sat in the snow, clutching his head, muttering that this was impossible. Dr. Harrington, pale and trembling, still tried to rationalize it. "There must be a logical explanation," he kept repeating. "There has to be." But Jonah wasn't listening. He was staring into the tree line, whispering prayers under his breath. Then we saw it. A figure. Just at the edge of the trees. Tall, impossibly thin, its outline shimmering in the mist. It didn't move like a person. It swayed, like a branch caught in an invisible current. Its face, or what should have been a face, was blurred, as though hidden behind fog itself. And then it spoke. Not out loud, but inside our heads. All at once. "One is mine, another will follow." Luis screamed and fired a flare gun into the tree line. The light burst through the fog, illuminating nothing but snow and shadows. The figure was gone. That night, no one dared sleep. We huddled by the fire, weapons in hand, the whispers circling us like wolves. Every time the flames dimmed, we swore we saw shapes moving in the dark, By morning, Dr. Harrington was missing. We pushed deeper into the tundra. The sled dogs grew restless, whining at things we couldn't see. The guide, Marcus, kept scanning the tree line as if expecting something. The silence was unnatural. Normally, even in the wilderness, you hear owls, wolves, or the crunch of snow shifting. But here, nothing. Only the sound of our breaths and the dog's nervous growls. That night, we camped near a frozen lake. At 2:47 a.m., I woke up to scratching sounds outside the tent. At first, I thought it was a fox, but when I unzipped the flap just slightly, I saw long claw marks appearing on the ice, as if something invisible was carving them. Marcus refused to talk about it. He only muttered a single word: tornet. Later, I would learn that the tornet are creatures from Inuit legends, giants who roam the Arctic night, hunting those who stray too far. The next morning, we discovered one of our sled dogs was gone. No tracks, no blood, just the leash snapped in half. By the third day, the frost had grown so thick on my beard that it felt like wearing shards of glass. We kept moving across the Alaskan wilderness, but the dread followed us like a shadow. The dogs slowed down without reason, often freezing mid-step with their ears perked toward the empty tree line. Every now and then, I thought I saw shapes shifting in the fog. Massive silhouettes, as if carved from shadow, watching us. At noon, we stopped to rest near a narrow ravine. That's when we noticed it. Our footprints were gone. Not buried, not snowed over. Completely gone, as if the snow had reset itself behind us. The trail leading back to where we came from was wiped clean. Marcus grew pale. "They're watching," he whispered. That night, as we set up camp, the wind carried strange sounds across the tundra. Not howls, not human voices, something in between. They echoed off the mountains, too synchronized, too deliberate to be natural. I tried to sleep, but my dreams were filled with shadows towering over me. When I woke, the fire had gone out completely, despite being surrounded by dry wood. And in the distance, glowing eyes reflected in the dark, unmoving, watching. The storm rolled in without warning. The sky turned black, and the snow fell so heavy it stung like shards of glass. We huddled inside the tent, but the wind carried whispers. They weren't random. There was rhythm, a cadence, like words spoken in a language I couldn't understand. Marcus gripped his rifle tight, eyes wide with fear. I had never seen a man so experienced look so broken. Around midnight, the tent began to shake violently, as though enormous hands were clawing at it. The dogs went wild, barking, howling, straining at their leashes. Then, suddenly, silence. I held my breath. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. And then, a voice, clear, low, and guttural, right outside the thin wall of fabric. "Leave." The ground trembled as something massive walked past our camp. The snow crunched under its weight, each step heavier than the last. When dawn came, Marcus stepped outside, his face drained of color. The entire camp was surrounded by enormous footprints, each one nearly 4 feet long. But the strangest part? They didn't sink deep into the snow, as if whatever made them was impossibly light, or not entirely of this world. The air that morning was razor-sharp, cutting through my lungs like glass. We broke camp quickly, though the dogs resisted every command. Their ears pinned back, tails between their legs, as if they knew something we didn't. By midday, we noticed Eli, one of the younger men on the team, was missing. At first we thought he'd gone to scout ahead, but his pack was still on the sled. His footprints led a few yards into the forest, and then simply stopped. No drag marks, no blood, no broken branches. Just nothing. Marcus cursed under his breath. muttering that name again. Torn it. Panic began to spread. Some of the men wanted to turn back, but the trail behind us still showed no sign of our journey. It was as if the wilderness itself had erased our existence. That night, while keeping watch, I saw movement in the trees. A massive shadow, too tall to be a bear, too broad to be human, slid between the pines. And then, two glowing eyes fixed on me. I froze, rifle trembling in my hands. But before I could aim, the thing melted back into the fog. When morning came, Eli's voice echoed through the valley. His scream carried on the wind. But it came from every direction at once. Marcus wouldn't let us search. He just said, "He's gone. If we follow, we'll be next." Sleep had become impossible. Every gust of wind carried phantom voices. Every shifting shadow looked like a towering figure waiting to step into the firelight. The men whispered among themselves, their nerves snapping like brittle twigs. That night, disaster struck. While we huddled near the fire, Jonas, our strongest sled driver, rose suddenly. His eyes were wide open, but he looked as though he were sleepwalking. Without a word, he trudged straight into the snowstorm, barefoot, wearing nothing but a thin undershirt. We shouted, we grabbed at him, but his strength was inhuman. He shoved Marcus to the ground and kept walking into the void of white. His outline blurred, swallowed by the blizzard. By the time we followed, his trail had already vanished. When we returned to camp, the fire had gone out. Again, as if snuffed by an unseen hand. In its place, drawn carefully in the snow, was a circle of strange symbols, carved with perfect precision. Marcus dropped to his knees, trembling. "These are warnings," he whispered. "We were never meant to come here." The dogs began to howl, not barking, but long, mournful cries that echoed into the night. And then, just as suddenly, they fell silent. Every single one of them. I realized then, we were surrounded. The shadows in the fog weren't moving randomly anymore. They were closing in. The fog that night was so dense I could barely see my own hands. The fire sputtered uselessly, as though the air itself refused to carry its flame. We were trapped inside a suffocating dome of white silence. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling us in the dark. Each crunch in the snow felt closer than the last. Marcus held his rifle tight, his knuckles bone white, his lips moving in silent prayers. Suddenly, a deep growl reverberated through the air. Not like any wolf or bear I'd ever heard. It was lower, heavier, vibrating in my chest like thunder. One of the men, Daniel, panicked. He fired blindly into the fog. The gunshot echoed through the valley, deafening. For a moment, silence followed. We dared to hope. And then, the scream. Daniel's voice tore through the night, high-pitched, primal, cut short in an instant. When we rushed toward the sound, all we found was his rifle lying in the snow, still warm. His footprints ended abruptly, swallowed by the mist. From somewhere out there, the growl returned, followed by something worse. Laughter. Low, guttural, mocking. The realization hit us all at once. We weren't the hunters anymore. We were the prey. By dawn, we were down to half our original team. No bodies, no blood, just absence, as though the earth itself had devoured them. Marcus ordered us to move. He claimed if we stayed in one place, the creatures would toy with us until none remained. His voice cracked when he spoke, but his eyes were steel. He knew something he wasn't telling us. We harnessed the remaining sled dogs and pressed forward. The air grew colder, sharper, until even the dog's fur was rimmed with frost. Every breath hurt. Every step sank deeper into the snow, as though the land itself wanted to swallow us. By mid-afternoon, we stumbled upon a massive stone structure rising from the ice. It looked older than time itself, dark, jagged, covered in carvings that twisted and writhed as if alive. None of us could read them, but all of us understood. This was a place of death. The dogs refused to move closer. They howled, their eyes wide with primal terror. That's when we heard it, a sharp crack, like bone snapping. We spun around just in time to see another man, Peter, yanked into the fog by something we couldn't see. His scream echoed, then cut off like a severed rope. When the snow cleared for a brief moment, I caught a glimpse. A colossal figure, hunched and deformed, with limbs too long for its body. Its skin was pale as ice, its eyes glowing like burning coals. And its mouth stretched wider than humanly possible, lined with jagged, broken teeth. It dragged Peter into the shadows. His blood streaked across the snow in a crimson trail that ended abruptly, vanishing into nothing. Marcus fell to his knees. "We've stepped into their hunting grounds," he whispered, "and there is no way out." We were only 4 now, Marcus, myself, and 2 others. The rest were gone, swallowed by the endless white. None of us spoke any more. Words felt dangerous, like they might attract attention. The snowstorm had eased, but the silence was worse. It pressed down on us, heavy and absolute. Even the dogs were quiet, their eyes fixed on the horizon, as if they could see something we couldn't. Marcus led us away from the stone structure, insisting we had to keep moving. But the land betrayed us. No matter which direction we turned, the landscape remained the same. Identical ridges, identical trees, identical frozen riverbeds. It was as though the world itself had looped. That night, exhaustion finally crushed me. I drifted into uneasy sleep and woke to the sound of whispering right in my ear. I shot upright, but no one was there. My breath fogged in the cold, but alongside it, I saw another plume of breath directly in front of me, before vanishing into the dark. The next morning, one of the men was gone. His bedroll was empty, still warm. He had vanished silently in the night. Marcus broke then. He screamed into the endless white, cursing the tornit, cursing the land, cursing himself for leading us here. His voice echoed for miles, but when it died, another voice answered. It was a perfect mimic of his own. "Marcus," it called, from somewhere deep in the fog. "Marcus, come closer." The rest of us froze. Marcus's face drained of all color. He raised his rifle, but his hands trembled. The fog pressed in tighter, curling like fingers around us. We knew then we were not lost. We were being herded. By the 11th day, only I remained. The others, Marcus, the remaining men, even the sled dogs, had vanished one by one. I had no idea how I was still alive. Hunger, cold, and fear were constant companions. I stumbled through the frozen forest, the snow deep above my knees, when I saw it, the stone structure again. This time, the carvings pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. A low growl echoed from inside. I realized, with terror, that this place was alive. Something massive moved in the shadows. I ran blindly, crashing through trees and over ice. The whispers followed me, calling my name, taunting me. Then I saw a faint glow in the distance, the edge of the forest. The mountains ended, giving way to a frozen river that led toward civilization. Hope surged. I ran, ignoring the screaming wind and my own exhaustion. Behind me, I heard it, a roar like the world itself breaking. The shadows surged, rushing through the fog, but I didn't stop. I ran for hours, slipping, falling, dragging myself across ice and snow. Finally, as dawn broke, I saw a tiny village in the valley below. I stumbled into it, half frozen and delirious. The villagers stared, horrified and confused. I couldn't speak at first. The stories I would tell later would be dismissed as madness. I survived, but the memories never left me. The forest, the whispers, the shadows, they are still out there. And sometimes, when the northern lights dance in the night sky, I hear my name being called. The Brooks Range keeps its secrets. Some things are meant to be left alone.